Hello, everyone, and welcome to this virtual conversation. My name is Nick McCarthy. I'm the Director of Programming at NewFest. We're delighted to feature this panel as part of our virtual conversation series at this year's festival. I'm particularly excited to introduce this one since it features three of the wonderful voices of our filmmakers. I'm really delighted by three projects that we're premiering this year at NewFest. The episodic series Sideways Smile, which everyone should check out if they haven't already. The delightful documentary Julia Scotti, Funny That Way, that is a very moving portrait, very local as well as one of the most auspicious debuts that we are featuring this year at the festival, TAHARA, and its director, Olivia Peace. So please, without further ado, join me in welcoming the moderator for our conversation today, the programs manager at NYWIFT, Barbara Vasconez.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, NewFest, for having NYWIFT today. I'm so excited to be here. Welcome to the Filmmaker Virtual Roundtable with NYWIFT. Hear from narrative documentary episodic filmmakers, as Nick mentioned, and featured at NewFest this year to discuss their work. I'm happy to introduce Susan Sandler. She is a writer in film, television, and theater. Her screenplay, Crossing the Landseed, based on her play by the same title, earned Golden Globe nominations for the Film Star. Sandler plays have been produced internationally and on NPR. Julia Scotti, Funny That Way, marks her debut as a director. She teaches at NYU Tisch Film and TV, where she guides the Fusion Film Festival celebrating women behind the camera. Olivia Peace is a queer Black interdisciplinary artist from Detroit, Michigan. After garnering critical and institutional praise for their 2017 short film, Pangea, Olivia landed a fellowship with the Sundance Institute in the year-long Ignite Fellowship Program. They spent 2019 working on their feature film debut, TAHARA, while still a full-time MFA student at USC. TAHARA premiered in January at the 2020 Slam Dance Film Festival to rave reviews. Currently, Olivia is hard at work writing their next feature film, In Case of Apocalypse, and is building and organizing with the artist collective Indefinite Village. Nguyen is a director, writer, producer. Most recently, she won the inaugural Made in New York Women in Film grant for Sideways Smile. She is the founder of FemSex Boston, an organization that runs a community workshop on female sexuality and identity. She is a member of the improv troupe Not Quite NSA, and most recently, and NASA, and most recently starred in their sketch musical Kung Fu Nuns. When she's not working in film, Hang is helping to create engaging learning experiences and teaching data science to adult learners. It's awesome. And I'd like to welcome all the panelists.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. That's a really cool thing to learn, data science. Really awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm so excited to have each and every one of you. And I just want to wish everyone congratulations on your films. I know that the process is hard, but you made it and it's awesome. And I'm very happy I got to watch all of them. If everybody can just introduce their movies, we'll start with Olivia.
Hey, so yeah, I'm Olivia, director of TAHARA. It is a breakup film about two teen girls who are best friends for their whole lives, where their friendship sort of falls apart at this funeral over the course of one day.
Susan?
Hi, Bobs. My film is Julia Scotti, Funny That Way, and it's a portrait of the incredible comedian Julia Scotti, who had a career up until age 50 as Rick Scotti. And transitioned to the time when people didn't understand what gender dysphoria was and had a really interesting journey back to comedy. And the film is about that journey.
And last but not least, Hung.
Hi, I'm Hung. So I am the director, writer of Sideways Smile, which is a web series about a young Asian American woman who goes on a journey of sexual discovery after reluctantly enrolling in this class to learn how to have an orgasm.
Love it. What an episode. So we'll start off. What made you want to tell the story? And I guess we'll start with Susan.
I think everything begins with falling in love. And I fell in love with Julia. I saw a performance of hers on a bill that a friend of mine had produced. And we went out afterwards for drinks. I had no intention of collaborating in anything. I just loved what I saw on stage. And we started talking about her work. I work in the theater as well as film. And I thought about a one-woman show I would really love to work with her on. We started talking about that. And it just grew from there. The idea that her story was so full of potential, that there was this incredible body of archival material. It just announced itself as a documentary. And for me, it was the beginning of a whole new chapter of my career. So it was really thrilling. 5 years of work, and here we are.
Oh my God, 5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
So the class that the show is based off of is based on a real class I took when I was 22. And it's a very grassroots organization. It's in all different cities and communities around the country. And it's a sexuality and identity workshop that's focused on empowerment. And it kind of changed my life. So, I decided to go into education. I decided to work with like building community. And that's sort of where the inspiration for the show came from. And in 2017, when I was watching like lots of amazing comedies led by like great, strong women, I really wanted to see something with like an Asian American lead and perspective. So that's what I wrote.
Love it. I love it. I will mention that in the very beginning of that episode, there's a little RBG moment. I know. I watched it and I was like, I also went silent when the photo went down. I was like, oh, rest in peace. But it was such a great and fitting moment, especially for that episode. So I love that. Olivia?
Wow. Well, I guess this is a little bit of a different experience for me. This is the first project I've ever directed that I didn't also write. So Jess Zeidman is actually the writer of this film, and she actually wrote it while at Northwestern University in a class called Writing the Low Budget Feature. So, she wrote it to be one location with only a few characters. And she wrote it from like a really personal place, like a personal experience, after having not seen this like very common environment that was really pivotal to her upbringing, which is Hebrew school. So the whole film takes place like in a Hebrew school classroom as like this kind of band of teens trying to deal with grief, albeit very badly. And so she brought the script to me via email because she knew of my work. I had also gone to Northwestern as well, and made a couple of shorts there that apparently she liked. And I honestly was like very nervous to direct something as my first feature that I hadn't written, that was like about a culture that I'm not a part of. So initially I was reading it just to see, what's this about? But while reading it, I got to one scene in which one of the teens pops a zit in the mirror. And suddenly I had all these ideas about how it should go. So it went from this sort of theoretical read into me having a list of ideas to then bring to Jess. And it kind of just went from there.
That reminds me, that scene reminded me of, I was with a friend yesterday and she's a teacher. And she used to teach up in the Bronx, and she had these one student who is like such like kind of a smart butt. Like he was so funny there, but he was like the worst. One time he was twerking in class and he twerked so much that his zit that he had forehead just popped.
Wow.
And I was like immediately thought of my friend. I was like, that's the story she told me today. formal student in the Bronx who was twerking so much that his zit popped, and it was like so big that it just popped everywhere. Yeah.
Cinematic, yeah.
Oh my
It was a
god.
little dramatic, but it was the funniest thing that I've heard in a long time. So when I watched your movie last night, I was like, okay, it's a high school thing. I never experienced like a zit popping, which I'm very glad about that, but that was really great. Yeah. And we also talked about a little bit just like high school in itself, like teenagers trying to deal with grief. Like it doesn't make sense. It's like hard to understand it from like an adult's perspective. Like when you get older, you realize you've lost someone that you won't be able to talk to. But when you're a teenager, you're just kind of like, you know, like, I don't know, maybe I'll be sad, but then everyone handles it differently. So I think you did, even not it being your story, your personal story, I think even with your directing, it showed that you actually cared about the script, and you did. Yeah.
Thank you.
Susan, has Julia Scotti seen your film?
Oh yeah. She's been very engaged in the whole process of bringing it out. You know, the vision that we had when we were just starting the festival circuit was going to be Julia traveling, doing comedy sets in the same area that the film was screening. You know, we were lining up the comedy clubs along with festivals, and this big basket of DCPs just ready to roll. So it was just this crushing moment of not being able to do what we had hoped to do in the festival circuit, of her live comedy along with a film as being part of this yummy package, you know, that we were going to travel with. So we've adjusted, but we've really enjoyed the conversations we're having along the way. It's been really fun. She's very involved in talking about the film and helping me think about ways of finding the audience. And she wants to travel with it beyond in community screenings, which I think is going to be really exciting too.
Oh, that would be great, especially for the like local towns that have like little comedy like homes here. I think that would be awesome. I think you should definitely check out New Brunswick. They have the Comedy Cellar or something like that.
We're ready to go. We're there.
That's great. I do like you know, the film does, you know, talk about her being like in her late 40s and now finally being comfortable in her own body. But I also did like that you did mix a little bit of like raw moments where, you know, she lost custody of her kids.
No, 15 years. I mean, that was a 15-year estrangement. And the film tracks their return to her life. We began our shoot just as they had come back after that 15-year absence. So it's all about their returning, the coming back together of this family, and Julia's return to comedy. And comedy is the language that they speak through. It's the way they find, you know, the center of their communication. So it has a kind of immediacy and humanity that I feel so privileged to have been able to tell.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. I was so broken for her, you know, and then seeing her daughter just kind of, you're being raised to think that your father has a mental issue, but really just wanting to just be themselves and wanting to be free. So I really like that whole transition from it just being not just about, oh, I'm back in comedy, but like as Julia, but I'm also with my family, and that's really great for me. Like I finally have it all together.
Yeah.
Even in my 50s. I did, like they said, everyone should get married in their 50s. I love that. I agree. I'll get married in my 50s. Were there any obstacles to filming? And let's start with you.
I think as indie filmmakers, we probably know budget is always an obstacle. Our cast, we had about 40 speaking lines, 40 characters. And so it was absolutely insane. And we made it work. I think we shot in the middle of summer in New York City, and it was hot, so hot. And I think the hardest day that we had was we had this loft in Bushwick for one day, and we had to shoot the entire like 5th episode there. And it was incredibly hot. It was not a very big loft. There was a lot of people. And we had to turn the entire, like completely, do the whole production, design, everything within like an hour or two, and then like shoot and then leave by like 6 p.m. So I would say that, it was, I look at production planning like as extreme event planning. You just have to like make sure, is there parking on the street? Is there overnight parking? Like these like tiny little details that if you don't have someone experienced enough who's done it, you will completely miss, and it could completely screw up your entire day. But we had an amazing team, and I was very proud that we were able to sort of finish on time every day, and on schedule. So I think that was our journey.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, parking definitely is a thing that needs to be considered. So yeah, I definitely, it was great. Olivia?
Yeah, I completely agree. Indie film budgets are no joke. And I'm based in LA, but we shot in Rochester, New York. So me and my cinematographer, Tahila De Castro, flew with a lot of our film equipment. Some of it broke in travel, so we ended up having exactly one light for the entire shoot. And then the other light Tahila made out of a serving tray.
Wait,
which like, yeah, like basically she like went to craft services and was like, do you have an aluminum pan? And then we went to Home Depot and got like strip lights to put inside of it. And that was our key light for some of the scenes.
That is indie filmmaking.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of that. We did get really lucky in that our location that we shot at is actually Jess's childhood synagogue. Shout out to Temple Bethel in Rochester, New York. So the location was just super beautiful and had a lot of really amazing lighting, and it's on its own. However, it was also under construction during the entire shoot. So there would be some days where we show up preparing to shoot one scene, but we would have to pivot on arrival because, the roof is gone, or there's no seats in the chapel now. So, we had to be pretty flexible, but we eventually got it all, 15 days.
I don't even see construction, so
that's good.
yeah. Were you worried about like construction happening while you were shooting and sound issues?
Yeah, we were really worried about sound. Luckily, it's like a pretty big synagogue, so there would be like hammering and drilling happening like in one area. So we would try to shoot like outside on certain days, or in the back lots. So eventually we were able to kind of coordinate also with the construction workers who were very patient with us. And yeah, I think they thought we were doing like a little student film, and then realized like, oh no, we're going to be here for 2 weeks. But
oh my God, yeah. That would be stressing me out. I had one experience like that where I wanted to shoot somewhere particular, and there was like a bunch of like people, like soccer players there, and that's not what I wanted, and I threw a fit. We ended up finding a different park, but it wasn't what I wanted. We went back, the soccer players were there, but my DP was like, what if we implement them into the scene? So he made it work. I was freaking out. I was like, this is it. I'm never going to shoot my movie. Nope. My DP was like, let's implement them into the movie. And
that's the vibe of indie filmmaking, and documentary probably as well. Is just sometimes you show up there on day and you have to kind of pivot, but sometimes those pivots like really make the film what it is, make it like memorable.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what something you think is going to work, and then it changes. That's fine. I mean, I never noticed anything in your film. I noticed a temple. I noticed that, and I did not notice any construction, which is good. Susan.
I'm sorry. Where are we in the question?
What were your obstacles?
Oh, obstacles. So lost in that construction site. Obstacles, you know, the obstacle really in a 5-year journey is staying focused and access throughout the 5 years. And Julia was incredibly generous about that. You know, the film takes us through a lot of extremely dramatic stories in her life and events in her life and unexpected events in her life. And she was incredibly generous and open to me being there with a camera in the middle of some pretty intense stuff. And someone who has a public persona, a stage persona that's so polished and so prepared to let that mask drop and to be who she is in private and to give us access to her private world and the intimacy of that was an incredible gift. So obstacles have been, you know, some very, very, very expensive footage that I had to license. The AGT footage was insanely expensive when she was on America's Got Talent. I had no idea when I went to the negotiation it was going to be that costly. And just, you know, making choices, because when you begin this has been a 5-year journey. So the beginning of, as you guys know, when you start to make those proposals, you have to offer the design of the film. And in documentary, you don't know where you're going to land. You don't know where life is going to take you. So the preparation for funding was as improvisational as the work has to be, because it's life. So it was finding what I needed when I needed it, but when I needed really big support, I had to really work hard to find the funding to get what we needed to sew it all together. And that's, you know, that's the focus.
That's great. How does your perspective as an LGBTQ filmmaker influence the stories you tell, if at all? Olivia, we'll start with you.
That's a good question. We've not been asked that. Yeah, I think when going into the story, it was really important for Jess and I that this be a more complex story than maybe the ones that people are used to seeing of teens, of queer teens, which is usually like a coming out story, where all the tension is on that. And this is a little bit different because I think it's a little bit unresolved even by the end of it, where is I think coming out, Jess and I were talking a lot, like in building the arcs for all of our characters, it's not a one-day affair, you know. It usually has to start with just noticing how you're feeling maybe about a particular person. And then kind of moving on through that. So this is just kind of like that first experience for one of our main characters, Carrie, and for Hannah as well, honestly. And that kind of gets a little bit complicated in that one of the other lead characters isn't there, which is Samantha, who's the student who actually committed suicide. And it's kind of like insinuated over the course of the film that Samantha was also a queer person. So the complexity, I guess, comes in that Carrie's starting to acknowledge and notice this part of herself potentially, while at the same time acknowledging that, oh, maybe the only other queer person she knows is not there and also wasn't particularly well liked. So yeah, Jess and I wanted to kind of stay sensitive to where teens naturally are, you know, and not try to make people a little too wise or not try to tell too big of a story in the day that we had. We tried to, and I think also on set, like we tried to be really sensitive about how people were feeling. Like there's a lot of kissing going on set. So I don't know, just little things like that. But I think also something that Jess and I were talking about is like the actual styling of the film is pretty queer too. Like we wanted to experiment a lot and just try new things and kind of push boundaries and see where that would even land. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Susan?
I think, I learned early on from Julia that she really wanted to be accepted for herself as a comedian, not to be labeled. Not to be labeled with her age, not to be labeled with her gender, to be who she is in her career. And that's been really a part of the mission of the film, is to allow that, not to pigeonhole her in any specific way in terms of the comedy world. And I think we've accomplished that.
Hank?
Yeah, I think just the nature of the show, and there's the classroom, and there's this diversity of characters coming from all these different backgrounds. What I wanted to make sure we were doing was being inclusive, but not even at like the base level of inclusion. It's like the nuances of like inclusivity when it comes to all these different identities and the intersection of what that means, right? We talk about like anti-Blackness in the Asian community. We talk about like trans people's relationships with their genitals, things that I think that we, that are much more complex and nuanced than, include people and have a diverse opinion, right? So I think that's where we came from. And in production-wise, we also wanted to be really sensitive to the actors and their stories and what they were comfortable bringing to the table. We also, we hired intimacy coordinators for our more like sex party scene to make sure that everyone was like comfortable. So I think it was really important for me to like have a set that people felt really comfortable in, that people enjoy, that people were laughing during, because it's a comedy and like we want people to have a good time. And I think we accomplished that. So pretty proud of that.
I love it. Love it. Here for it. How do we disrupt invisibility, crush toxic image stereotypes of underrepresented groups, and how do you feel like your film represents that? We'll start with Susan.
Thank you. I think, ageism is such a big thing in comedy, and Julia is 66. She just did a Showtime comedy special. She's absolutely ready to start her acting career. And this is my debut as a filmmaker. So I think in terms of the ageism story, this film really knocks all of that down, And I think that, those kinds of barriers to thinking about storytelling and thinking about how to open up fields for all kinds of stories from all kinds of age groups is really an important mission of what we're doing right now. So that's been the entertainment channel that we're on.
Love it.
Sorry, what was invisibility, right?
Yeah, invisibility, crush toxic images, stereotypes of underrepresented groups, and how do you feel your film, your show is?
Yeah. So I think when I approached writing it, I actually wanted it to feel very normalized, like we were normalizing these bodies, these people, and like, I think someone said it on another Q&A I had, but she was saying how like it was so refreshing to see an Asian American person who was exploring their sexuality, but not in like the like super guarded, like, prude way, and also not in like the super sexualized, like kind of like quote unquote dragon lady way. And so that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted it to be like, this was my experience growing up. I feel like I'm an American, like I don't, and so I just wanted it to be a very normal experience that somebody would have. And that's sort of where I was coming from with that.
That's true. And I did feel like when I was watching the first episode, I feel like you made it so natural that I wanted to do that experiment. I was like, maybe I should try that. It felt like everybody needed to do it. Like everybody needed to feel comfortable with just saying even vagina, being like, just saying that. and it just felt super natural, super normal. Normally, like, honestly, I feel like it would have been taken as like, this is making me uncomfortable, but it was more of like, just be honest and truthful with yourself, love yourself immediately, and it was.
Yay.
I did see episode 2.
Yeah, do you laugh?
I was having that conversation with my therapist about the last person I dated kept telling me that they didn't have a Latina fetish, yet telling me all these women he previously dated that were Latina. And then when we first, and then when we first had sex, he was like, call me Poppy. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. And then I was telling that to my therapist, where I was like, I feel like this is wrong. Like, people, like, okay, you can have a type, but like, don't objectify me, because that's initially what I felt. And then I watched that episode and I was like, oh my God. Literally what I was just talking about with my therapist, of being objectified, not like for being like a woman, a Latina woman.
Yeah.
And it just be like, okay, like, this isn't normal to me. Like,
yeah.
I don't have a type. I just, like, my type is like dating someone who's like normal and like fun, and not going to tell me how many Latin women he slept with, and just no thanks. But yeah, I
guess I'm not glad that you had that experience, but I'm glad that there is some like truth and relatability to the story.
It was true. When she got to the party, I was like, oh my God. And she's seeing all these people, and then it just became like this incestuous like community, where it was like, oh, I dated him too. Oh, it's great, but it's fine. We're family. I'm like, ooh. I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you knocked it down. So that was decent. Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I'm just so excited to see both of your work. Like, it sounds so exciting and beautiful. That's really cool to me. In terms of, I guess, what we did is, I think, kind of what we've been talking about already is like, it kind of starts with just a willingness to be vulnerable and to appreciate your own story, you know. Like Jess and I, in rewriting the script, there was a lot from our own personal lives that we mined and held up to the light and then put in there. And being brave enough to do that, I think, is what allows your audience to empathize with your characters legitimately. So, you know, for me, it was just like, oh, of course, like, one of our characters is going to be Black because I'm Black. And so, like, what do I know besides like being a queer Black teenager? And so, like, we get a lot of questions in that, like, oh, this is a Jewish community, but there is like a Black teen who's like at the center of it. And like, growing up, I did grow up in a community that was predominantly Jewish, and there were a lot of Jewish people of color. So that was something I felt really, like, I guess not even, the word isn't even important, but just kind of like obvious to include in our film, and to like handle that with respect and not as like, oh, the main part of the story. Yeah, I think a lot of that just started with us, me and Jess, like coming together and being like, yeah, brave enough, I guess, to tell our own story and put that in there.
Yeah, I love that. And you and I spoke just before we started filming, but you and I spoke about my own experience with grief as a teenager and being surrounded by a community. I moved from a very diverse community to a very not as diverse community in right in the middle of middle school, the end of middle school into high school. So I just like kind of, I'm here. And I became friends with this one awesome girl, and unfortunately she like passed away. And it was like a Friday we were hanging out, and then Monday I was at her funeral. And it was crazy because I didn't really understand it at all. I kind of was just like, when I was watching the beginning of your film, and it kind of felt like they were just going to like I don't know what they were doing in the beginning. I just thought they were like going to hang out. But when I realized that they were at a funeral and they weren't emotional in the beginning, I was like, why are they like writing notes? And then I think about the funeral that I attended, like when I was with my friends, it was not like we didn't know what was going on. It felt a little unknown and uncomfortable. It was a new experience for all of us. So I thought, bringing that kind of like, and you showing that, I feel like a lot of people are going to resonate with that. I mean, I'm not saying everybody's like emotionally dead as me, but
well, it's hard. It is hard because grief is a sign of love, right? And so, and love is something I think honestly a lot of are embarrassed to experience publicly. So as a teen, you're just kind of figuring it out. Like, how do I grieve? How do I show my emotions in public? How do I assert myself? And so, this is a film where we're just kind of trying to like cycle through a lot of different really complicated emotions of very young people. But our actors really killed it on that. Like, understood all the story beats. Stood very still in frame.
I liked your actors a lot. I did like the two main girls. They were perfect. So I have a couple more questions. Do you have advice for any upcoming queer filmmakers? I'm gonna start with you.
It's funny because I don't want to do like, just do it, or like, because partly it is like, just do it. Like, I had never imagined that I would be here or like having the conversations I'm currently having right now about the show with like people who actually like have the power to make it into something. And it was never written or made to go here, right? It was always just like, I just want to tell this story. So I think part of it is like, don't underestimate yourself and just do it. I do feel like I have to say that like there is a large amount of luck and there's also a large amount of privilege that comes with being able to create something, especially in film where it's incredibly expensive to do. So, I think the world that we're in now is that, yes, like, people have figured out that diversity sells and that like they want like more representation, which is awesome, right? At the end of the day, it is awesome. And so you're getting a lot more grants out there and like opportunities and fellowships and labs and stuff. But I think as a queer filmmaker, definitely like if you feel like you're not moving anywhere in your career, also know that it's not you, right? It's like a whole slew of other factors that, that you might not have access to when it comes to creating and being validated by the industry.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to get validated, especially now. But I feel like with, everything that's going on right now, I feel like you should just do it. You should just tell your story. I mean, I want to hear different voices. Nick and I talk about it all the time. We want to hear new voices now and be able to support that. I want to feel uncomfortable in movies now. I don't want to feel just like safe, like, oh, haha, I know what's going to happen. I want to hear these stories. I know that there are people out there, coming from different backgrounds in their lives. And I think providing that for anybody to feel like they also have a voice and have a say to do something would be important. Susan?
I think, building community is everything. you know, and being able to give and receive that support. I mean, that's the continuum. I found so much support from former students of mine who I mentored, who came back to mentor me on this project, and faculty that I worked with who came back to support me. Beautiful people like Sam Pollard, who's an icon in documentary, looking at early cuts of my film and saying, "You've been working on it for 5 years." Yeah, that's about right. And I just thought I was just swimming and lost. But you get this community around you, and then you have the opportunity to give back to that community. And I think that's everything.
Yeah, I agree. Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, ditto what everyone else said. Along with that, if it's for a narrative, have your editor on set. Whatever you can do to make that happen, do that. We had our editor on set, and he saved the day so many times, just letting me know this is not going to cut together. You have to reshoot. We only had 15 days. That saved us so much in post. And then beyond that, just take your time. Like hearing Susan say 5 years, like take your time to get it right. I think we rushed in the beginning, and it just created all their stress where it didn't need to be, like let the story come naturally and come as it is. Yeah.
That's true. I give a lot of advice to screenwriters. It's never rush. Write as many drafts as possible. Just like whatever you're thinking at the moment, just write it down. It'll either be in the final draft or it won't. But just write. I was working with this incredible team called the Writers Lab. Love them so much. And always said the who, the what, the why. Always. And then just keep writing, keep doing it, make mistakes, work off those mistakes, keep improving, and then you're going to have that script. Don't rush for anybody. And I'll just have one last question for everyone. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned making this movie, or what we're in this middle of this pandemic, and unfortunately we cannot physically see the audience watch our movies, or just be able to talk to an audience, talk to people who maybe have the experiences, because that's the one thing that we're missing with all these virtual film festivals, is that we can't physically talk to the audience, because I know sometimes audience come up to filmmakers and be like, wow. What is something that you're learning from this, or what you're making it work for? Susan, we'll start with you.
I think for me, the biggest lesson has been to be fearless and resilient. And when you get a disappointment, when something slaps you down, just use that energy to bounce, just turn it around and bounce up, because it's really indie doc filmmaking is so much about perseverance and just staying on track and just hanging in there, just being absolutely single-minded in where you're headed.
Olivia?
Yeah, work with your friends. This is something that would not be completed at all if not for the love of my friends. And yeah, I think being willing to ask for that help when you need it is really key, especially now. Yeah.
Love it.
I think on set, get a great AD. Find an amazing AD who you trust and love. And I think if you're, sitting at home and working on a project, I think also it's really great as a writer to just find someone to bounce ideas off of, and that you trust, and that they're your go-to to just brainstorm. Because it's so easy to just sit there and be like, I'm so stuck. I don't know what the heck is going on.
Love it. Yeah. Support is everybody needs all the support, and I love it. Again, thank you so much for speaking with me. I'm so excited for you guys and the journeys of your films. Again, congratulations. So thank you Thank you.
Thank you.
For chatting with me. Please let me know updates of your films. I want to know everything about it. I want to know everything, even the little things.
Appreciate it.
Yes. Again, my name is Barbara. I'm program manager at NYWIFT. If you do not know us, please check out NYWIFT.org. We have a huge summit coming up. We have our Muse Awards as well. Check us out, NYWIFT.org. And if you want to become a member, you should. It's NYWIFT.org/membership. Thank you. I thank you, everyone. Thank you, NewFest. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Shannon.